Hey, everybody, welcome back to your Full Crew podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldai, your host and the CEO of P3 Tech Consulting, as well as the publisher at Autonomy Global. We are dedicating this episode to the really cool theme of artificial intelligence. And what we're going to hear today is how AI is intersecting with Army transformation, acquisition reform, cybersecurity, and doing all kinds of things in terms of coding. So, really going to be a great episode. We got some wonderful people. Before we introduce them, give me 2 seconds, and I'm going to thank my sponsors, Carahsoft, Aiken, Quantum Systems, and Flyability for making this show possible. All right, without further ado, let's go around the horn. We're going to start with Jake Tayo. He is with Raft. So, Jake, if you could tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then we'll just keep going around.
Sure, sounds good. Thanks, Dawn. Hey, pleasure to be on today. Looking forward to it. So, hey everyone, I'm Jake Tayo, Dr. Jake Tayo. I'm a PhD in machine learning from Carnegie Mellon University, and I spent about the past 10 years in the Department of Defense building intelligence systems for the defense of our nation. And really, most of that was at the Army Research Lab, where I spent just under 10 years. And now I'm the Director of Artificial Intelligence at Raft, where we're kind of continuing this mission and keeping building intelligent systems.
So, fun fact, everybody, I met Jake at the AFA Warfare Symposium back in Denver in February. Wrote an article because I had an opportunity to interview him. And frankly, it is still our number one article on Autonomy Global. So go check it out if you haven't read it. Apparently, everybody else has. So it's wonderful to have you on the show, Jake. Everybody obviously wants to hear what you have to say. So let's go to Michael Shrader next.
Sure. Thanks, Don. I'm Mike Shrader. I am been with Carahsoft 21 years, coming up on 21 years. I wear a couple of roles I think that are relevant to the discussion. One is I lead a big piece of the sales organization. My organization, we segment the technologies we sell into all segments of public sector, but with a unique focus on DoD. But we do have a pretty substantial AI portfolio, everything from compute and server infrastructure up to the applications themselves. And then I've the last couple of years inherited the vendor onboarding, so vetting new vendors that are hitting our front door. So I end up taking a lot of first calls with innovative technology companies that are looking to break into government, from all segments of Silicon Valley to Austin, Texas, to everywhere across the country and even the globe. So hearing from lots of AI companies that are early stage, but looking to achieve some applicability with our government.
And you guys had such a huge crowd at Special Ops Forces or SOF Week in Tampa a couple weeks ago. I had the incredible opportunity to interview a handful of them. So everybody stay tuned. I think later this week, that article is finally going to post on Autonomy Global. So make sure you're checking that out to see the wide range of uses of AI in the government sector. So thanks, Mike, for being on the show. And I'm not going to screw up your beautiful name. So we have Dr. Halleh Seyson.
Yeah, Halleh Seyson. Yes.
Halleh.
Hi, Dawn, and everybody.
All right. And I did screw it up. So, of course I did. So, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here. I'm Halleh Seyson. My background is in software engineering, and for nearly 3 decades at this point, I'm aging myself, I've worked at the intersection of technology, government, and business outcomes. I've supported clients implement and scale enterprise systems nationally and internationally. Over the course of my career, I've had the opportunity to work across a range of sectors: finance, healthcare, aviation, and serving a broad spectrum of government agencies like DoD, the VA, Department of Transportation. Currently, I serve as Vice President of Enterprise Systems and Data Analysis at CNA. CNA is a not-for-profit research and analysis organization. Our mission is advancing the safety and security of the nation, and we support government agencies at different levels, federal, state, local, achieving this mission. I also lead CNA's Innovation Incubator, or as we call it, CNA I Squared, where we invest in early stage ideas and explore bold new solutions, including emerging technologies like AI, to help public sector leaders to solve their challenges. And outside of CNA, I'm also an angel investor. So that gives me a front row seat to the kind of, bull and early stage innovations shaping the future of AI and technology.
Well, I just learned way more about you, Halleh, than I knew from our initial conversations. And everybody, CNA is a media partner with Autonomy Global, and we just had an amazing article authored by Dr. Rebecca, was it Yang, I
Yes.
believe, about your UCATS, UTM, essentially simulator. So I think that launched like this past weekend. Check that out. Really great stuff happening over there at CNA. All right, let's get into these articles because I can't wait. This first one, I believe, is Jake's. We'll pop this up. And my memory of this one is it's pretty technical. So while we're waiting for that image to show, we'll go ahead and, Jake, why don't you tell us a little bit about the article you selected, why you selected it, and yeah, let's go.
Pretty technical. Come on, Don. It's like
Hey, I had to look up a lot of words in that. I honestly did.
Yeah, sure. So the article I brought along today is Alpha Evolve, which is some recent work out of Google. And really the summary of this paper is an application of language models in this kind of big ecosystem, and then targeted towards essentially the hardest problems that we face as mankind essentially right now, which is scientific discovery. So, we only know so much. And kind of the mark that a lot of people have for like, has AI made it, right? Like, is AI actually like something super useful and can it really contribute? Can it fundamentally contribute to our understanding of science? So in Alpha Evolve, this is a paper that describes this rough architecture of how to put many different LLMs and teams together to work together to try and get after solving some of these fundamental problems. And technologically, the approach isn't, anything hyper insane. It's basically we have a bunch of language models that are doing coding, and then we have an evaluation set up that like actually lets us prove or disprove what these things are doing. And the main reason that I bring this, and the reason I think it's super important, is if we look at the defense space right now, then everyone's talking about agentic AI. Everyone's talking about retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, and these various like chatbot type situations. And I don't really mean to minimize that because, like, in some sense, what these things really are they're better searching and they're better untrustworthy workflows in some sense. And both of those are important, and they have their place, and they will be very important in many places throughout the DoD. But I think the thing that's coming, right? The thing that is coming, the thing that we are working towards that I think is super important is this sort of like fundamental advancement in our understanding type technology. So think of like the military decision-making process or any place where we're like trying to do strategy. Then we have, ways in which we're going about that. But having some sorts of systems like this to like fundamentally be able to actually like come up with new things that are beyond what we have been able to ideate up until this point, I think is really the differentiator in kind of setting aside like what we can actually really achieve with AI marching forward. So yeah, that was the very high level view, but hope that was a reasonably sufficient summary there.
No, it was good. I want to fill in a couple holes just to kind of get the audience up to speed. So Alpha Evolve is actually a new AI coding agent that Google created. And this article, it's an evolutionary framework. And this article talks about some of the things that Google was able to do using this Alpha Evolve. And it's kind of crazy, honestly. The one that blew me away, Jake, was, and again, I had to look this up, where it was, let's see my note here. Okay. A breakthrough. It set a new lower bound in the 11-dimensional kissing number problem, finding a configuration of 593 spheres. So, okay, everybody out there's like, what the hell is the kissing kissing number problem? It's basically my understanding, and Jake, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. It's basically how, like, from one point, how many spheres like you can connect kind of or overlap in a certain area, and like this 11-dimensional problem, nobody had come up with a number for it. It was an unsolved problem, and this thing solved it. And I just watched Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning over the weekend. And that's all about the entity, which is an AI agent that like basically has become self-determinative, is like looking to take over the entire world. And I read something like this about how this is solving problems humans haven't been able to solve, and it scares me a little. I don't know if I should be scared, but I would love to hear some of our other guests' thoughts on this. So much that this one particular agent has already done and achieved in the realm of science that humans haven't done before. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the article. So we'll go with Mike first.
I mean, I think the whole code agent concept is probably one of the more reachable or applicable areas where AI could be adopted into workflows. I've heard its nearest term as far as the AI characteristics that translate to those tasks and workflows. So it makes sense that's where this early innovation is heading. I'd be curious whether we can truly ingest it into our government's workflows through the government lens. As it fits with a lot of the downsizing and the creating streamlining of efficiencies through doing more with less in our government. But it makes sense.
I mean, you still need the humans to make sure it's working right. And that was something I picked up also from this article, the kind of the human AI. I mean, you always hear about human machine teaming, HMT, but the human AI teaming is kind of a theme that I pulled from this article, which I thought was really interesting. And so please, Halleh, please,
Halleh.
I'm never going to get it right. So let's just admit it right
Yes.
now.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So as I was reading this article, I had learned before where Google's DeepMind anticipates the development of artificial general intelligence, AGI, within the next 5 to 10 years. And I was like, these are the steps towards that. And it's fascinating. I think the other point that is not already made, I would point in the article is the optimization, both hardware and software. And I think that's extremely important because one of the hurdles, or not hurdles, but challenges to solve is the staggering cost of computer power, right? I mean, we have like state of Virginia's data centers, given the state of Virginia has the most number of data centers in the nation, is 26%. I mean, this is 2023 data. So I think breakthroughs in terms of optimizing software and hardware use and bringing costs down is a key step. And there were very promising points here in terms of what Alpha Evolve does in terms of optimization. So that caught my eyes.
I think too, if I can jump in real quick, Don.
Please, yeah.
Yeah, Halleh, I think I agree a lot with what you're saying there, and like cost is certainly a big issue, and I think that's maybe fundamentally the main reason I was kind of going after like this sort of ideation that this article brings. It is like if we continue to think about AI as like, okay, it's better search, or it's slightly better workflows where we're like depending on these essentially not super reliable AI agents. In those settings, it's really hard to justify the costs. And I think that like fundamentally, that's why these approaches like Alpha Evolve, while their costs will still be very high, I think the capability in which they bring, which is like, okay, can we actually fundamentally rework and like think about these problems in ways that were just unachievable, unattainable before, reformulate them in ways that really matter. And Dawn, the stuff you mentioned as well about like the human machine teaming, it's hilarious like how much you hear this talk, but how much it's like actually still forgotten when it comes to like systems actually being used. So I think these structures like Alpha Evolve are the key steps towards like actually formulating problems in ways that actually matter, both in terms of like actual like game-changing outcomes, with also depending on the human machine teaming. Because like in this article, like you'll see too, like one of the key pieces that's maybe not super obvious is the evaluation. And without that like very robust evaluation stack, none of this is possible in the first place. So I think that those are all really good points, and I think they all really point to like why this is like the important or a very important direction to push. And especially as we see more and more of these things getting adapted into military systems, I think that the direct application, to kind of tie it back to the military finally, I think the direct application in our military systems is something that is like, it's not an if, it's a win, and something that we already have like really meaningful steps. And even in the past few months, I've seen some very promising advances in how the DoD is kind of dealing with these big computationally heavy things that are making this all possible.
Yeah, the human in the loop and the ability for engineers to leverage these computations or the code suggestions or the mathematical or other problems that this thing has been able to crack is great. What concerns me is, I guess this is just a question to the group. Do you think there will be a point where the AI will be able to figure something out and humans can't understand, like can't even get their brain around like how it happened or if it's accurate or, I don't know. Like, in other words, could the AI advance so far ahead that the humans won't be able to, kind of, let's say, supervise it?
Yeah, I want to like pose this the other way, actually, like
Okay.
flip this question around, which is if you read in that article, one of the really, really cool things I liked is it discovered this new heuristic for a certain scheduling algorithm. And what they
Yes.
said about this heuristic was that it was like beautifully simple. And I think that everything that we know always comes back to human understanding. So in these cases where like if AI is doing something that's like not interpretable to us or not understandable, then I think there's even huge question in that value. And then it's like, has this even been properly vetted? Like if we can't even understand it, how can we know that it's going to be like super effective? So I think that almost a criteria of these big advancements is that we can understand it as humans.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and now I'll sleep better tonight. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and roll. Like, unless anybody has any other closing remarks on this particular article, we're gonna move on to our next one, which I think is Halleh's, and it's the use of agentic AI and cybersecurity needs more transparency. So let's go ahead and Halleh, just tell us a little bit about this. What is it about, and why did you select this one?
Sure. So I would go with why did I select this first, maybe.
Okay.
So this the topic of AI and cybersecurity, both and in interaction with each other, are very relevant to not only the mission of my company, the CNA, my organization, but also the capabilities and what we do. We help government modernize mission systems safely and securely, adopt emerging technologies and evaluate, implement, govern AI. And again, as we do that responsibly, safely, securely. And this kind of article always catches my eyes. And the topic of AI and cybersecurity these days are extremely important. Actually, to the topic that article that Jake picked, it was about AI, agentic AI as well, right? So agentic AI using agentic AI for security operations has a very real appeal, right? We all know what agentic AIs do, and they make life easier. They take a lot of tasks in that human beings cannot manage in that time frame or at all. and they make decisions autonomously. So in security operations where there are a lot of labor-intensive tasks, agentic AI makes a lot of sense. And this article is about how the benefits and also the risks of using agentic AI for cybersecurity operations. I said a little bit about why they're useful, but the risks that this article suggests, first and foremost, transparency. It's hard to build trust in systems that operate with limited visibility when they function like a black box. Again, agentic AI says take actions, and we may not immediately it may not be immediately clear for us why they made a decision, or was it justified, or was the data used reliable? And then if they make a mistake, how do we correct course? We need explainability. We need the agentic AI is designed so in order for us to be able to see what happened, to audit and to course correct. Another issue that this article suggests is accountability. If something goes wrong, who's responsible? Is it the AI developer? Is it the human operator? Is it the organizations? And the third one is governance. There has to be a clear standard to test, deploy, and oversee. And as this article suggests, the path forward, again, is greater transparency. But also until then, we can use them to help with tasks, but we can use them as advisors, not a full decision-making power.
Okay, that's excellent. That, in my mind, it raises a couple things. I mean, it ties back to that human in the loop, or kind of the human oversight that we just were talking about with Jake and his first article. It also, reminds me that, for our Law Tech Connect event, we've raised this issue of AI and governance and policy and regulation a couple times. I will tell everybody out there, 2026, stay tuned, because 100% we're having an AI panel. I hope some of these folks will be involved in that. But it's just so important, and this idea of governance and what does that look like. So great article. Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Jake next about this, but before I do want to level set, because I don't know that everybody has a full appreciation of what agentic AI is versus other types of AI. People use the word AI for almost everything, right? Like AI is, people throw it around like our thing is AI driven, or like our thing is AI powered. Like, what does that even mean? So I'd like to throw it out really to anybody to talk about the types of AI and how agentic AI is a little different, because we did touch on that in the first article, and now of course this one. So Halleh, I don't know if you want to handle that.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead, please.
I'll go first, and I'll get help from Jake. So yes, agentic AI, first of all, they are goal-oriented, right? They are designed for particular tasks, and that's extremely important. When we use models, I know we will talk about military, it's extremely important for the user to know what the model is built for and how it's used. Because a model that's good for X may not be good for Y. And so we have to distinguish that. This reminds me, and sometimes people notice that the LLMs they interact with is extremely agreeable. In fact, OpenAI just rolled back their release of a model end of last month. Because it was just way too agreeable, and people thought it was almost deceiving them. So I think it's important to know what the model is built for. That's number one. But going back to your question, the difference between AI, like you said, we just throw out those names, and agents are have a very specific goals, and for those goals, they do everything to achieve that goal. So that's where the governance, that's where you set the parameters. So is it deterministic or creative? What is it used for? Those parameters are extremely important, and how humans design it and correct it and train it. I'll say that much, and ask Jake to chime in here.
Go ahead, Jake, please. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Halleh, I think you did a great job, honestly, explaining the difference. And honestly, to me as well, like anytime I hear like agentic AI and AI, like I'm just distancing myself from these terms as much as possible because they're so bloated, and to everyone they mean different things. But I do think there are like a couple really important fundamental differences. And to kind of start at like the highest level here, one of the things in this article that I find interesting with like a lot of articles like this is they're asking these questions about, transparency and understandability, explainability, all of these things. And what's interesting is like we have had pretty good solutions. I won't say perfect solutions. But we've had pretty good solutions to this for building machine learning models. And these have been around for many, many years. And like if we look at like machine learning systems that exist in the DoD or anywhere, typically you have this team that trains it, they understand the distributions and kind of the parameters, and that's where you get a lot of that confidence and like this very nice formulation. The problem is, though, once we move into this realm of agentic AI, just like you were saying, Halleh, it's like now what's happened, the fundamental difference is historically models were built with a very specific purpose. So all of the engineers built it, they know a lot about the hyper-specific problem. Now with agentic AI, we have these LLMs that have been trained for just general use. So they can do whatever you ask them to, right? Like programming these agentic AI models is like, hey, can you do this? And once you're doing that, that's where all the problems kind of come in of like, now we are way outside of the realm of what anyone really deeply evaluated this thing to do. But I think what's interesting is we can still take the lessons from the past 70 years of machine learning and apply them even on these downstream problems. And basically it means, you have to do the evals, you have to like set it up. And I really like the way you stated it, Halleh, as well, where you said it should be more of an advisor and less of a decision maker. So even just reformulating the problems that we're having these things solve so that we ensure that it's in the role of an advisor and not a decision maker. Or if it is a decision maker, some way to de-risk that still so that we can still take the risky things and offload those to the humans. So I think, that was probably a little rambly, but I really liked that article, and those were the key things that really jumped out to me.
No, it was great stuff. And we had Cybersecurity Month, I'm going to say 2 months ago on the full crew. We had Hannah Latonic from Dark Wolf Solutions on the show. And she actually, Halleh, raised an article very similar to this in terms of leveraging AI for cyber security. So it's a cyber month show, but this idea of AI and how AI is becoming nefarious in some respects. People, criminals, others leveraging AI to commit cyber crimes, and then how you actually need to fight fire with fire, if you will, and use AI to detect these because they are so fast. It is so furious. So once again, everybody, if you missed that show, go back and watch it. But there's also an article about it. Google. What was it? Black Mamba. We talked about so many cool things in that show. But AI was something that kept popping up. So Michael, I want to go back over to you on this one. And you work with so many companies, like you said, you onboard new companies to work with government. You mentioned, can the DoD leverage something like this if there really kind of aren't bumper lanes? Like we just heard from both Jake and Halleh in terms of agentic AI. Like, what are your thoughts on this?
So I agree with the concept that the cybersecurity industry is ripe for disruption, leveraging AI, both helping do more with helping augment our humans that are clearly left in the loop, but also combating these threats that are AI driven and fighting that fire with fire concept. This isn't meant to be a political statement. It feels like the previous administration over-rotated a little bit away towards a lack of trust where there's, instead of starting with trust and addressing issues when obviously we need to be able to trust and see some transparency or view transparency within these models that are getting deployed. But it feels like the last few years have been, let's start with a lack of trust and study it and study it and study it, and it's sort of put us behind as far as what's getting deployed. Just judging based off of what we see getting adopted by not just the DoD, but broadly across government. It feels like none of the projects none of the projects the government is trying to stand up with prototypes are making it out of the lab for issues that are maybe in some cases perceived lack of transparency, lack of trust in what's going on in the model. So I'd like to think there's some middle ground between, hey, let's start, let's address issues that as they come up versus assume the issues are already there, and then never get out of square one.
Look, I think Halleh can also agree with this, because I know you've got folks in the aviation, aerospace, aeronautical sectors looking at these things. Sometimes when the mission is so critical or it's a national security mission, that need for transparency and certainty, I think, is important, because, again, I'm talking Hollywood now, and I get that. But, sometimes Hollywood, or what we see in TV or read in books as fiction, becomes reality, or can become reality. We saw that sadly with 9/11. I mean, that was written in a Tom Clancy book, using a plane as a torpedo into a building. So, having some kind of certainty, having at least initial bumper lanes. I mean, I look at the FAA and people criticize all the time, crawl, walk, run, they're so conservative. But when you're talking about safety in the national airspace, and we've had some horrific incidents in the last few months with crewed aircraft, commercial airliners, helicopters, people dying, I don't know that now with air traffic control and what's happening there, do we throw AI and say, hey, that's going to fix it? Because, we have agentic AI now. I don't know that answer, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this idea of risk and, deploying some of these systems in critical missions, whether it's DoD, whether it's critical infrastructure, something that if it melts down like a nuclear facility, that's going to be a big, big, big problem. Kind of where are we on that journey? If you guys have any opinions on that, I'll just open the floor.
I think.
Nobody wants to answer it.
Go ahead, Jay.
Go ahead.
All right, I'll go first.
I'll defer to you.
All right, I'll go first. Just reflecting on what you said, Don. I agree. The risks are high, especially when it comes for a topic like cybersecurity. So I think there is sort of good, bad, ugly. Because on the one hand, the risks are high, or the stakes are high. The risks have to be mitigated, and we have to use these systems as advisors until the trust is established. But I think the technology is also moving very fast, and there are solutions to some of these problems. Like this article is talking about, like we need to audit, just like audit, when humans run the operations. Well, there is now a solution to auditability. You can trace the entire AI, like an AI model. You can trace what actions has been taken. So the requirements of auditing will be met. But like explainability and how much of a black box they are, while true, and I think that's a very important issue to address. But we have to also realize that human beings can be black boxes too, right? Like they take an action. We trust them to some extent, right? They go through clearance, whatever, both technically and their clearance. But there is a certain amount of questioning that has to be done, and you question them and they answer, right? And then you have to trust the answer. And you have to find other ways to verify. The same thing with machines, I think. So just some thoughts on.
No, that's a great point. Humans can be a black box too. I guess the question is, how are we doing the equivalent of that, 100 plus page Form 86 or whatever it is for your TSSCI clearance and the polygraph on the AI? Jake, over to you.
Yeah, I agree a lot with what Halleh is saying. Like, I think that's really the right perspective. And I also think the only bit I would add to it is I think that we also forget the risk of the systems that are in place. So like what's interesting is it's like everyone looks at these new systems and like they have to be completely risk-free, like they are replacing a system that is risk-free. So I think that like that's the trade-off we really forget to look at a lot is like, sure, there's risk. Is it an improvement on risk? And things like that. And of course, it's a different type of risk that we have to be comfortable with. But it's not like it's replacing a risk-free system.
No, air traffic control and what's happening there. I think that's a great example of exactly what you're saying. Will the new system actually be worse? Like, probably not. So, and
We
the
can measure it.
technology.
We can measure it if it's worse or not.
Well,
Yeah.
another great point. So, wow. All right. Good stuff.
Don, can I add to that? Like
Yeah,
you
please.
mentioned the national security space, it is clearly blending with cyberspace. They're becoming one and the same, and the
Right.
stakes are just that much higher that I don't think we can afford to continue to study these systems without deploying anything. I think the stakes are too high, and it's going to continue to put us behind the curve without addressing all of those threats that are AI driven that are out there in this threatening national security at this point.
Yeah, yeah. Not just cybersecurity, but just kind of intelligence gathering is another great example of what is happening out there and what are the ramifications, what can it mean, what are the, A, B, C, D, E plus, courses of action that can occur, to have AI be able to throw that into. Look, I sat through enough PowerPoint slide briefings, with the quad charts and everything, to have AI to kind of run through like, hey, here's the most risky, least likely, those scenarios. I think as an advisor or I was never a commander because I was always the lawyer, right? I only gave advice, but to have that kind of information and to be able to validate it, as we talked about, I think is really key. And when seconds matter, like in counter UAS, I know we're going to get into some of this in a second with Michael's memo that we're going to talk about here that he selected. That could be the difference between life and death. So it is exciting. I don't want to sound like negative Nelly. I'm playing devil's advocate here. I'm throwing things out that I think most people will think about, right? So, any other comments on this article before we move on?
I will add one more thing on
Sure.
the. I'm optimistic. I love the promises of emerging technologies. I would add, because Jake and I both covered some sort of agentic AI, they are targets for cyber attack too themselves. So that by itself, so it's funny. It's a recursive thing. So it's important to know that they can be attacked by, for data hijacking and whatnot.
Or manipulation. Look, information is power, and if all of a sudden the data that goes into a system is not accurate, almost like spoofing, jamming, we're seeing this on the battlefield with drones as an example. But that can happen in an AI that's giving a commander information to make decisions, and now those courses of action to make decisions they're basically mutated, for lack of a better term. They're just not accurate. You're just making bad decisions. Maybe you're looking at something that doesn't even exist or isn't there. That would be a huge problem. So once again, loved MI8. Go see it. Tom Cruise at the top of his game. Great movie, but it's all about AI, everybody. So check that one out. But I want to take a second real quick and once again run through our sponsor list for this quarter. We really are thankful, and Michael, Carahsoft is always a wonderful supporter of everything we do. So Carahsoft sponsoring, they actually sponsored our live stream from the Space Symposium. So therefore, they are a crew sponsor this quarter. Aiken was just at Law Tech Connect, and Exponential with us. Quantum Systems was at Soft Week, and Flyability is going to be with us and sponsoring the upcoming Energy Drone and Robotics Coalition Summit stream. So hope to see some of you there. Back in Houston again. Good times in a couple weeks. So let's go ahead and roll into Michael's selection here. Now, Michael, you picked a memo, and this is an official memo from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, basically to the Secretary of the Army, directing certain things in terms of transformation and acquisition reform. Why don't you walk us through this and tell us why you picked it?
Yeah, so I picked this one. It was on the heels and being as I mentioned, the stakes being as high as they are in national security and the defense community. This memo is the first coming out of the DoD community on the heels of the president's larger executive order on AI less than 30 days prior. But it clearly calls out some directions that they're Hegseth and the current administration is looking to take our armed forces, demonstrating the intent to strengthen our military through technology modernization. It calls out AI-driven command and control. So lots of the decision-making processing and what the terminology closing the kill chain, those seconds that matter, even more so here in the national security space. An increased reliance on drones and unmanned systems. We can interpret that to mean not, having the human taking the human out of the loop, but needing less humans to close that decision cycle and to gather more data. I thought there's very interesting, a clear intent to divest resources away from obsolete systems, and more specifically, the acquisition reform, which may or may not be interesting to the more technical audience, but clearly outlining the intent to steer money away from a lot of these older archaic programs that I think have become barriers to entry in terms of innovation. Their funding cycles last years, if not decades. The way they plan and execute funds, like they're constantly executing funds against technology that at this point is not at all relevant in today's world. So I think the old version of the acquisition cycles around this programmatic spend has not been able to keep up with the pace of innovation and technology, let alone this rapid innovation around AI, and steering money towards capability buckets like that AI-driven command and control, the unmanned systems, will likely lead to better, more rapid prototyping, expansion of successful prototypes, and then the increased interoperability across lots of different diverse sets of capability, lot driven by AI. So I thought it was a clear indicator of the administration's acknowledgement of our DoD's need to modernize, need to lower the barriers to entry to incorporate all this AI innovation that is we're seeing a lot of these companies not even thinking this is a relevant market for them because of how hard it is to break in and break that programmatic spend cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw the rise over the last couple years, even before the current administration, of groups like the Defense Innovation Unit, of course, SoftWorks, AFWorks, SpaceWorks. The Army and Navy have their equivalents. To try to break some glass to get problem statements out there, use other transaction authorities and leverage other statutory authorities to kind of bring these things on board from the commercial sector into the DoD more rapidly. Some of that's gone well, some of it, we can debate that. But yeah, definitely our acquisition processes within the Department of Defense and really across the federal government writ large are antiquated, they're not timely, and they're not definitely moving at the speed of relevance. So breaking some of this glass, I think, is really important. And this memo, if you haven't read it, you should check it out. It talks about, counter UAS. Hey, let's embed that in every single Army unit. So if you're a counter UAS company, you should care. But guess what? All of these things are leveraging AI, kind of back full circle to where we started. So I'll go to Jake and kind of get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I got a lot of weird thoughts here, I think. And
a lot of weird thoughts, he says.
I think I'm going to partially play a little bit of devil's advocate here as well.
Okay.
And honestly, I think my response is more of a question to everyone than anything. But I think from my perspective, one of the things that's still really hard is like the reason that these big programs are there and they have these very long funding cycles is because like it is actually really hard to have really great systems that is in like critical pathways, and not really hard just from the technological side, which it is hard, but like also just the programmatics and regulation and things like, we're already talking about regulating AI as part of this, right? So like these extra steps of burden really become super hard to deal with. So I think that like ultimately we're just always in this like fundamental trade-off between like maximum understandability, trustworthiness, things like that versus like, rapid cutting edge things. And I think too, like if we go back to like what is the real difference between agentic AI and traditional traditional machine learning? And really the difference is like agentic AI has just been trained in a way to where we can kind of shoehorn it into way more things super easily. So really it comes down to a cost thing. And and it's almost just flipped the tables to where previously you had to justify this is a problem worth solving and we need this ton amount of money so we can train a specific machine learning system to do it. But now with agentic AI, we're saying the opposite. We're saying, hey, it's really easy for us to prototype stuff. Let's just prototype everything on the planet and see what sticks. And then when it sticks, we'll figure out how to go from prototype to something real. So from my perspective, it almost seems less like we need to worry about getting to the prototype stage and much more like the gap from prototype to like real system in use is that's the real struggle from my perspective, at least. So yeah.
I mean, I'll go to Halleh. Is there a use case that you can think of where, hey, this is is it counter UAS? In other words, we heard about in this memo calling out command and control in particular, leveraging AI there. And when I think about C2, I think about the connectivity, the solutions, whether it's multi-domain, robotic operations, land, skies, surface, subsea, some kind of a system, and then leveraging AI to help, control them, not only how they're flying or swimming or walking, but also the data that's coming back, whether it's video streams or information. I mean, is that really the perfect use case in a way? And I'm not talking about deploying weapons. Okay, let's put that off the table just for a second. I'm just talking about, situational awareness, battlefield situational awareness, getting humans out of harm's way, doing those kind of even interesting humanitarian missions like clearing mines so civilians aren't getting blown up. Is this AI C2 arena maybe one of the better fits for kind of launching this, I don't want to call it experiment, but first big use case?
Yeah. So in my personal opinion, I think that's a great use case. And again, it's very promising. It's very encouraging to see this memo. By the way, I when I read it when it was released, I was very encouraged. And Michael, thank you for sharing again and for me to refresh my memory with it. But because in command and control, humans are going to make the decisions. But it's just the amount of data and then the information, the process data that they receive is not manageable with any other way but AI now with the computing power and everything. So I think you have a lot more information Now, is there going to be a mistake somewhere? Yes. And again, going back to models, training them, all that. However, I think ultimately this is a great use case where AI can serve as an advisor, provide information, and you make a lot more informed decisions as a commander.
Yeah, that's great. Mike, back over to you. What are you seeing? I mean, Carahsoft, you guys have really positioned yourselves as experts in this space. You're looking at the new companies coming in, you're talking to those federal and DoD clients all the time. Like, what are they looking for? Is C2, the kind of the space where people are feeling very comfortable that this is a good fit?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think a lot of the decision assisting platforms that are AI driven, to Halleh's point, that like all the taking the all the scale of data that's being collected by all these sensors that and all these systems, and being able to synthesize it and then aid a decision-making process around it. Again, even closing that decision cycle by a few seconds can, again, the stakes are as high as they could possibly be in the DoD national security space, and we're not technically even at a major wartime. So I think there's that the stakes being as high as they are translates to dollars, and it's attracting more companies to this market. To bounce off of Jake's earlier point, I agree. I don't think we need more outlets towards prototyping. I think a lot of companies have gotten sucked into this vicious cycle of going after and winning these prototype and R&D contracts. I think the memo sort of more ties the prototyping that they're looking to fund to actual mission requirements. I think the last couple of years, all these outlets for R&D and prototyping efforts that companies are coming into the market and winning isn't transitioning at a high enough rate because it's not tied. They're not those efforts are not mapped towards real requirements that are tied up in these large programs that you have to break into, and in a lot of cases controlled by prime contractors. That is a different story. So I think it's not a matter of increasing the raw number of prototypes and R&D projects. It's increasing that transition success rate, and creating that sort of repeatable path, or repeatable motion. And yeah, C2 definitely. Command and control is sort of the area that seems with DoD to be ripe for most disruption.
Yeah, it was interesting. I just saw SoftWorks has posted an RFI for drone-in-a-box solutions. Now, if I was one of those companies, I'd be looking at that, if I make that, and I'd be looking at all this memo and the other requirements out there, and I'd be making sure I'm throwing the buzzword AI in my proposal, that this is AI-driven DIB solution that for command and control. So it's interesting because I think we're going to see, Jake, you're in a space where your company is working on AI. I'd love to hear your perspective on partnering with other companies to kind of create, let's call them, I know I'll use Carahsoft's term, better together solutions. Because I think if you come to the table with something like, Raft's AI embedded in, I don't know, X DIB solution, now you've got something that no one has to think about improving or changing or adding something to, even though modular open systems architectures are something, of course, real big in the DoD right now as well for this very reason. What do you think about that in terms of looking at some of these requirements like the SoftWorks thing, and even as a company not making DIB and thinking, that's something we might be able to help a company that's in that space, like take this whole thing to the next level.
Yeah, definitely agree. And I don't know if I'm at liberty to name any names, but like we certainly are situations.
Let's not get you in trouble with your lawyer. So like, let's not.
Right. But yeah, I definitely agree. And I think what else is interesting here, and I think like maybe one of the points we're kind of collectively arriving at is like artificial intelligence here is the easy part, right? So like what's actually really hard here, like, fundamental data fusion is super hard. What makes it even harder you're going to fundamentally be in a multi-vendor heterogeneous situation, which is always going to make it even more difficult. And then on top of that, there's going to be like, each vendor vying for their extra piece of the pie. And of course, like the bigs doing stuff along that as well. And and even when we go back to like the transition percentage, like one of the big things that really stood out to me after my roughly 10 years at the Army Research Lab is like transition percentage is super low. But it wasn't because the technology wasn't actually really good. It wasn't because there wasn't an advancement. What it was is that the percent advancement that technology gives is just simply not worth the cost, time, effort, and energy to implement. So it's basically like there's this bar of like it can't just be an improvement. It has to actually be a really massive improvement to make it across this like transition threshold. But I think given this, given Michael's article here, I think this is it's certainly very exciting to see that I'm not the only one sitting here preaching about this, and like people know it, and we're making changes to actually try and come up with better systems in which we can push things past that transition boundary more often.
All right, awesome. We are almost at the end of the show. I knew time would fly because this is an interesting topic, and you all picked amazing articles and papers to discuss. So what I want to do is make sure there's nothing else we want to talk about on this one before we kind of do a quick around the room, letting everybody know, how they can learn more about what you're doing at your organization or company, and then, how else they can reach you. So any, as we said in the military, any saved rounds on this particular article before we move on?
I'll add one.
Yes, please.
So something we haven't touched already, which is it was very encouraging to me to see, at least in terms of bridging the policy and practice, this memo is directing that vision. And I remember first of all, in supporting government for the most part of my career in government contracting framework. And, when agile methodology came into the industry for years, the procurement processes of government did not yet catch up. I mean, it's not fully catch up even today. And it's very encouraging, again, to see that at least alignment of government procurement processes and the technological processes, which is such a key step, has been envisioned in this article.
Yeah, so more to follow. We'll see how it all works out. So,
Yeah.
All right, let's go around the room and we'll start with Mike. Tell them a little bit about where people might be able to see Carahsoft or learn more, and also how folks might be able to reach you.
Sure. Find me on LinkedIn. Under my full name. I'd be glad to engage there. Our website at Carahsoft has a pretty robust set of collateral from different informational market education projects we run in conjunction in partnership with our vendor community. We hosted an AI for Government Summit probably 2 weeks ago at this point. So lots of assets are up for anyone who missed that. It was in our building in Reston, Virginia. We're at all the major trade shows in industry, from all the FCS shows to the national security shows. You mentioned Soft Week. DOTUS is going to be in the late fall, early winter timeframe. Lots of industry engagement, and like I said, contact me on LinkedIn. Love to continue the conversation. Visit our website, and there's lots of helpful, collateral and content that hopefully can contribute towards the conversation.
Awesome. Halleh, how about you?
Sure, thank you. Halleh Seyson, you can find me on LinkedIn. My company's page is CNA Corporation on LinkedIn, or the website is cna.org. We support a broad spectrum of government agencies, DoD and civilian agencies. And yes, please continue the engagement. Reach out on LinkedIn and check out our website.
Yeah, very good, very good. And like I said, next month in Security Month on the Dawn of Autonomy, we'll have a CNA representative talking about some of their efforts in that space. And then Jake, last but not least, how can people learn more about Raft and find you?
Yeah, so you can learn about Raft. Check out our website, teamraft.com. It's got pretty much anything that you're going to want to find on there, as well as ways of getting in contact with us as well. You can find me on LinkedIn as well as Raft, and or I think you can even give me a Google and probably find some means of contacting me if need be.
And you can always read the article. Again, it's still #1 on Autonomy Global. So real quick, as we end this show, wanted to thank Carahsoft, Michael, and Aiken Quantum Systems Viability for making this all possible. Wanted to thank our amazing guests for taking the time to find these articles and papers to discuss with us and sharing your expertise. Thank everybody out there for watching. What's coming up next is we are rounding out Energy Month on the Dawn of Autonomy tomorrow with Sean Gare from Energy Drone. And on this full crew next month, we are focused on sea tech. So we're diving into that maritime space, no pun intended. It's going to be awesome. So see y'all then. Until then, we are out here.